The moment before my father died, he grabbed my arm so hard his nails dug into my skin and whispered something that still haunts me. At the time, I thought maybe the cancer had finally taken his mind. Now I know it hadn't. I watched as the light faded from my father's eyes. The hospital machines made one last ticking noise before settling into complete silence. His chest rose and lowered one last time. His dark, sunken eyes settled onto mine before he passed. Even in death, he still looked afraid. There in the dark, I stayed seated with no one to comfort me, hoping my mother would answer my call. My father, Jim Simmons, had no other family, no one to depend on. The few times I'd met him growing up weren't pleasant. He always seemed distracted, like he was never really there in the room with you. His eyes had this way of drifting toward the floor mid-conversation, like he was listening to something coming up through it. I supposed I shouldn't have been surprised. My mother had said he had a mental breakdown, that he was no longer safe to be around. Back then, it had taken him weeks to realize we were even gone. There were days he would lock himself in his own office and no one would see him till the next morning. I may not have known him well, and I was honestly kind of afraid of him, but I still cared for him. To see someone go like that, I wouldn't wish it on anyone. His last dying moments were soaked in a fear I didn't yet understand. His words repeated in the back of my mind over and over again. None of it made sense, not then at least. Looking back at it now, I wish he never said them. To die in silence would have been better, before death had taken him from this world and into the next. He looked at me with fear and anger. His lips trembled as the words parted from his mouth. I can hear them, they're still down there. All those lights, the emptiness. I tried. A tear gently rolled down his face. The heart monitor beeped louder. I really tried. I'm sorry, I'm afraid I'll. His last breath left his mouth with his eyes settled on mine. He was deranged, Alex. My mother scoffed on the other line. Look, whatever he did or whatever he said, just forget about it. It doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't concern you? What about his apartment? I said. I stepped outside the hospital and looked up at the stars. It was 1 in the morning and I could tell my mother wasn't sleeping. She had ignored my calls earlier. What about it? She hissed. Well, maybe there's something there that would explain whatever he was talking about. He gave me his keys. He gave you his keys? She sounded annoyed. What else was he supposed to do? Let the apartment complex take his stuff. Guess that makes up for all the years of not being your father. I rolled my eyes. Like you didn't run away from him after all these years. You never gave him the chance to redeem himself before his death. Still, she had a point. But none of that mattered, not now. She continued, I don't like how he just popped back into your existence without talking to me first. You deserved a better father, Alex. Like you would have listened to him. I gave him plenty of chances. He destroyed our family with his stupid obsessions. It drove him mad. I could hear her breathing heavily now. She was pissed, and maybe rightfully so. What obsessions? What drove him mad, Mom? Every time I asked you, you just turned the other cheek and didn't respond. What was it that you were so afraid of about him? I waited and watched as an ambulance turned on its lights and sped off. Mom, I wasn't afraid of him, Alex. That's bullshit, Mom. How many times had you moved us across the country to get away from him? Did you really think that would work anyways? He was a damn detective. What do you want, Alex? It's getting late. I can't even begin to think about sleeping tonight. Not with that look he had on his face, not after what he said. So I confessed. You keep your secrets then. I'm gonna go check it out, see what's there. This late? No. You stay put and get some sleep first. We'll talk more tomorrow. I want to be there when you go. Okay. I said, biting my bottom lip, knowing damn well if she did really want to go, she'll take her sweet time in doing so. Alex, promise me you're not going over there tonight. You need the rest. Okay, I promise, Mom. I lied. Without another word, I ended the call. I opened my right hand and looked down at the reflective metal in my palm. He had given me the key to his apartment. There was no way in hell I could sleep tonight. The apartment door creaked open so loud, I was afraid I had woken up all of his neighbors on the ground floor. I stepped inside and shut the door behind me. I watched as goosebumps crawled up my arms and across my skin. I wasn't alone. Something was there. Something was waiting for me all this time. The feeling of guilt settled in the pit of my stomach for being here so soon and lying to my mother, like a spoiled child waiting to open their gifts before Christmas. Everything in here was mine now. No one else wanted it or had any right to claim for it. I doubted my mother would have wanted any part of this. The truth was, though, I didn't care about his belongings. Sure, maybe someday I could use it or sell it, but I wasn't here for that. I wanted to understand what my father was so afraid of, what he must have felt guilty for, a burden he carried until his very last moment. It had only been 2 hours since he passed, and seeing his single recliner in the living room, no other chair or couch waiting for any company, I regretted not trying harder to get to know him after. All these years away from my mother's grip, in the living room, stacks of books and papers were spread across the room. The air was stale. When I turned on the living room lights, 3 out of the 4 bulbs of the main light were out. It was too dim to get a good look at anything, so I pulled out my cell phone and turned its flashlight on and began looking around for clues, anything that would point me in the right direction. The first thing I stumbled on was the living room wall behind the recliner. I moved closer to see, ignoring the sounds of the upstairs neighbors stumbling around above me. In large and small letters alike, my father had written words and sentences all across this wall with black ink. All these lights, all these rooms, they followed it. We followed them. Don't go into the tunnels. Don't go, do not go now. I stumbled backwards. There were drawings of what looked like pipes and boxes. So many of them I followed his trail, which led me straight up to the ceiling, and I gasped. The entire ceiling was coated in black scribbles. More of the same words, there in the middle of the room, etched into the ceiling by what I can only imagine was made by a knife. Do you hear them? I shook my head and felt my stomach turn. Maybe I shouldn't have come here, not so soon. My father's words were still ringing in my head. I'm sorry, I was afraid. I was in a room where a madman had lived. I felt sick. I headed straight for the door to get some fresh air, but a blue flickering light from another room caught my attention. I crept towards the nearly closed door and opened it. Inside was a computer and monitor, humming away through the night. The screen flickered on and off, a blue screensaver showing what looked like a blueprint. I walked into the room and turned the light switch on. Nothing happened. Did he really live like this? For how long? I raised my phone light and revealed a small desk room. I pulled out his desk chair on wheels and sat down. The screensaver was a blueprint of the tunnel systems below the city of Omaha. I then looked over down to my right. There was a newspaper on the desk covered in dust. I lifted it up, dust scattered to the air as I brought it closer to view the date and title. April 2010, 9 children missing. On the front page for the City of Omaha News were small pictures of each child that had gone missing, all their faces smiling from what must have been a school yearbook. All of them were 8th graders. As I looked at each one, I felt the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. A floorboard creaked behind me. I quickly turned around, expecting somehow my dead father to be standing right behind me, his terrified sunken eyes looking down at me. No one was there. If you watched so far, I'm sure you like it. I would really appreciate you subscribing or at least liking the video. A white stripe on a shelf behind me caught my attention. I pulled it away from the shelf and looked it over. It was a DVD case with a single disc in it, the label written with a black sharpie. Body cam footage, April 2010. Without hesitation, I opened the case and inserted the disc into his PC. I was met with a locked screen. Irritated, I looked around at his stacks of papers and sticky notes, no indication of what his password would be. I sat there thinking, wondering how long I would be here and how much more I could handle of this presence I felt hovering behind me. My first attempt was simple, admin and admin. Neither of them worked. I buried my face into my sweaty palms and sighed. I don't know him well enough, and I sure as shit wasn't good with computers. So I tried my mother's name, doubting every second of it as I hit the enter button. Nope. Finally I landed on mine, and to my surprise I was in. Great. Another thing to add to the guilt. My heart raced as I hovered
If
over
you
the disk
listened so
icon
far, you
and
probably
sat there
liked
in
the
the still
story.
darkness.
Consider
The
subscribing
screen
for more
brightness
such
reddened my
stories.
eyes. There were 4 video files waiting on the screen. I played the first one and turned the volume up. Body cam footage 1. The video opened with a burst of static before the image slowly came into focus. There he was, a younger version of my father staring back at me as he adjusted the body cam's lens. He looked healthy and full of life, a man I barely recognized. The camera jostled as he stepped out of his car. It was 5:17 p.m. The sun was bright and made it hard to see as he moved forward outside towards what looked like a giant parking garage ahead. My eyes shifted back and forth as I waited to see what happened next. As he stepped inside the parking garage, he was met by a police officer. "Hey Jim," the police officer said. He was overweight and clearly out of breath as he spoke. "What you got for me today, Hopper?" my father asked as they walked towards what looked like 2 kids further inside, waiting for them. Hopper shook his head and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Several kids, 9 of them to be exact. 8th graders. They've been missing since this morning. None of them showed up for school. Parents are worried sick. There's a pair up ahead that we've been questioning. I think you'll want to talk to them." "Wonderful," Simmons said. "Another waste of my damn time." "So they skipped school and were afraid to suffer the consequences at home, maybe." Hopper hesitated then and scratched the back of his neck. "To be honest with you though, I don't think so. Not these ones." They then caught up with the 2 kids who waited for them. Both of them looked nervous and uncomfortable as they waited inside the parking garage. "I'm Detective Simmons," my father said to them. He then turned his focus to the one on his left. "Let's start with you, son. What's your name?" "Adam," he said, his voice shaking. "Nice to meet you, Adam. You want to tell me what's going on?" Adam tried to speak but struggled with his nerves. The other kids spoke instead. They went down there. "What's your name?" My father spoke. His voice was calm and mostly gentle. "Kevin." "Down where, Kevin?" Kevin turned and pointed towards the maintenance door. "Through there." "Was the door locked when they tried to go in, Kevin?" Kevin shook his head. "No." "Did you watch them go?" Kevin nodded. "Yes. They tried to make us come, but I didn't listen." "And why did they want to go down there?" my father asked. "The rooms? The sewer?" Hopper said. Kevin and Adam shook their heads. "No," Kevin spoke again. "They wanted to see the rooms. Kids at school talk about it all the time." "Other kids have been going down into the sewers?" Hopper asked. "I don't know. They talk like they have, but I'm not so sure." Adam then finally said something. "Billy told them about it." "You're not talking about the homeless guy that usually hangs around in this garage, are you?" Hopper said. Both teens nodded. Hopper turned to Simmons. "They're talking about Billy Costigan. I'm sure you've met him before." He grinned. Simmons rolled his eyes. "That addict always finding something new to cause trouble with. Doesn't surprise me one bit. He started living down in the sewers." "That's luxury for him." Hopper laughed. Simmons turned back to the boys who stood there nervously. Neither of them wanted to make eye contact. "You saw the kids follow him through that door?" Both of them nodded. Adam answered, his voice shaking. "We watched them follow him down. He said he found something, just like that. Follow the junkie down into the sewers," Hopper said. "I guess so," Kevin responded. The footage ended. I leaned back in the chair and rubbed my eyes, almost missing the start of the next scene. I looked down to my right and saw I was still on the first tape. Both my father and Hopper were now descending a rounded metal staircase, their feet clattering against the metal steps. Every now and then they would pass a light bulb on the concrete wall. The stairs seemed to go on and on. I could hear them talking, but I couldn't make out any of the words they were saying amongst the rattling noise of their footsteps. When they finally reached the bottom, there were voices on the other side of a large metal door. Hopper opened the door and they walked into what looked like a large tunnel. There, standing on a platform, were several more men in different uniforms and what looked like a small fire crew. All of them were wearing hard hats. One of the men in a blue hard hat spoke to Hopper first. "I can hear them, but it doesn't make sense." The men surrounded a large wooden table with a blueprint laid across it. My father cleared his throat. "Where do you think the children are currently?" One of the firemen moved in closer and pointed to the map for my father. This area right here. Now, if you look over here just about a block away, that's where we are. We can hear the children chatting, whispering to one another. I think they are still trying to hide from us. Take me there? Jim asked. The fireman nodded and moved away from the table and blueprint. The whole group followed him down the tunnel. They rounded a corner and eventually they came to a new opening built right into the side of another large tunnel. In it was several vertical pipes on the left side, and on the right was a single small pipe sticking out of the wall. 3 other men were already inside, talking to each other. The room was no bigger than a bedroom. The fireman paused and then pointed towards a horizontal pipe sticking out of the right side of the wall. If you listen, you can hear them through that pipe. My father got down on his knees and leaned in, the camera shifting in its place. I could no longer see the pipe itself, but it was tilted at an angle, just enough I could see the other men standing in the room with him, watching. They looked helpless and confused. The first thing I could hear from the footage was giggling, a child's giggle, then a kid's voice telling someone to give it back. My father moved closer to the 8-inch diameter pipe. Hello? Can anyone hear me? The children continued to giggle and laugh. Sometimes what sounded like words were said, but nothing sounded clear enough to understand. Simmons took his metal flashlight out and banged it hard against the pipe. The sound carried through a ways before going silent. Hello? Anyone there? Simmons yelled. One of the men in blue hats shook his head. His face was bright red as he confronted the rest of the men in the room. Look, I get that we all can hear them in that pipe, but I'm telling you none of this makes sense. My father got off his knees. They're in there somewhere. We need to find the entrance to that room. Where is it? The man scoffed. You're not listening to me, goddammit. None of you are. Take it easy, Carter, Hopper said, his arms crossed against his chest. The man stood there and lowered his head. He then looked straight at the pipe, his eyes heavily focused. That pipe was abandoned years ago. It leads to nothing, just concrete upon more and more concrete. It was originally to help with overflow, but those plans got scrapped for something else. I was here when we put it in. I'm telling you, it's not connected to anything. Not other pipes, not other rooms. Not even a toddler could crawl inside it. There's nothing in there. The room fell silent. All their eyes focused on the pipe sticking out of the wall. Only the voices of the children echoed through the silent room. End of body cam footage 1. Consider subscribing for more such stories.